Hey guys, it's Colin Studios here, and in today's video, I'm going to be ranking all 34 defunct roller coasters I've been on, meaning coasters that no longer exist for one reason or another. Now, classifying this can be a little tricky, especially with what recently just happened with Six Flags America. So before I get into the actual list, I'm going to list off all of these standing but not operating coasters I've been on. These are coasters that might reopen, hopefully will reopen in the future, but as of right now they are standing, not operating. They could become defunct, but I didn't want to make the call on them being defunct yet since we haven't seen definitive signs that they will no longer exist. These coasters include Hellcat at Clementon Park, Great Chase at Six Flags America, Raging Cajun at Six Flags America, Wild One at Six Flags America, Professor Screamore's Skywinder at Six Flags America, Roar at Six Flags America, Joker's Jinx at Six Flags America, Superman Ride of Steel at Six Flags America, Firebird at Six Flags America, Batwing at Six Flags America, Skyliner at Lakemont Park, Leap the Dips at Lakemont Park, and Switchback at ZDTs. All of these are not defunct for one reason or another. Like some of these, such as Switchback, they're probably going to wind up relocating, and it is currently standing. It hasn't been completely removed as of now. And with the Six Flags America coasters, we just don't know enough about the future of the property right now to make a definite determination on which ones are staying, which ones are going. That's all just rumors as of right now. But those are the SB&O ones, and there is one coaster that has been relocated ever since I rode it, so it's kind of defunct to me because it's no longer at the park I rode it at, but it does still exist, and that is Tornado that was once at Jenkinson's. But now we can get into the actual list, and at number 34 we have T3 at Kentucky Kingdom. This ride, when I rode it, was absolutely atrocious, and the main reason for that were the trains. These trains were made by the manufacturer known as Kumbach, and they just did not fit right on people at all. Felt like your legs were going to be amputated with the way that the thigh part of the restraint sat on you. That, coupled with the fact that the ride wasn't really that smooth either, definitely made for a really miserable ride experience. Number 33, we have Time Warp at Canada's Wonderland. This is the infamous Zamperla Valair model, and these rides are not pleasant. I rode the one at Luna Park in addition to this one, and that one was at least bearable because it wasn't very rough. This one was definitely a little on the rough side, and I did not enjoy it one bit. I'm very happy it's gone. Moving on to number 32, we have Goliath at Six Flags New England, one of the very rare Vekoma giant inverted boomerang coasters. I rode this all the way back in 2017 when I was very small, and I remember being petrified because it didn't feel like I really should have been on it because I felt like I was too small for the restraints. But those restraints and those trains in general were absolutely atrocious, and they are definitely the reason why so many people hated this ride. Moving on to number 31, we have the Wacky Worm at Gillian's Wonderland Pier. This ride is so low for no reason other than the fact that it's just a wacky worm. It's nothing too special. I mean, it's a fine ride. There's nothing wrong with it, but at the end of the day, it's just a wacky worm. There's not really much to say about it. At number 30, we have Lil Leaper, which was at Lakemont Park. This was their kiddie coaster that I was very lucky to ride, actually, because normally they don't allow people over a certain age or over a certain height to ride it. But when I rode it, they let me, which was great. There was a video of me on it. That video doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately, but I can say I did, in fact, ride it, and it was fun. Moving on to number 29, we have Tidal Wave at Jenkinson's, and this is a ride that probably will wind up relocated. So the way I kind of judged it is that this ride has been disassembled, so it is technically defunct from the park. As for whether or not it gets relocated, we won't know until we see it pop up elsewhere. And there are a couple coasters on this list that could wind up relocated. We don't know for sure, but they seem pretty definite to be defunct, and that's why this one is on here. And it was fun, it was fine. You know, a typical SVF with a bit of a different layout, wacky worm layout, basically just spinning. And it was fun, but nothing too special. Moving on to number 28, we have the original Fire in the Hole at Silver Dollar City, which was a very cool ride. The new one that I just rode over the summer, definitely a little better than this one because it's more modernized, but this one was fun nonetheless. More of a dark ride than a coaster, and that's why I have it so low, but it was still fun. Number 27 and 26, we have the two Kid Flash Cosmic coasters that were at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. I believe they are actually still standing, but I highly doubt they're ever going to reopen, so that's why I feel pretty confident putting them on the defunct list. They were pretty fun rides, incredibly unreliable though, and I think that's definitely why they pulled the plug so quick on them. I don't even think they were around for a year before they decided to permanently close both this one and the ones at Over Georgia. I didn't ride the ones in Georgia, but I rode these ones. They were really fun and looked excellent at night, that I will say for sure. Moving on to number 25, we have Sand Serpent at Busch Gardens, Tampa, which was their Wild Mouse. It was okay. It definitely felt very out of place at that park because you had a lot of these, really upscale, many like higher capacity rides. and then just a wild mouse. It didn't really fit. So I'm kind of glad they got rid of it. I'm not a big fan of the replacement. Phoenix Rising is not my favorite ride ever, but this ride was pretty cool for what it was. At number 24, we have Crazy Mouse at Steel Pier. This ride was very interesting because it was definitely a little on the janky side. It was operated in a very interesting manner, and I'm not surprised it closed. They actually did replace it with a newer version of essentially the same ride, which I almost rode, but of course it was closed when I went there. But this ride was fine. You'll see quite a few of these kind of in a row as we move to number 23 and number 22, which is the two Primeval Whirl coasters that were at Disney's Animal Kingdom. These were two side-by-side clones of each other, spinning wild mice, standard run-of-the-mill ride. Very fun, especially when you got a good spin going, but nothing too crazy. Moving on to number 21, we have Tidal Twister. It was at SeaWorld San Diego. A lot of people kind of argue with each other on whether or not this is counted as a coaster. Personally, after riding it, it kind of felt like a coaster, and it's on RCDB, so that's enough for me to classify it as a coaster. It was not very good. It was definitely very rough, and it's interesting because I've ridden half of the Skyline coasters ever built, and all of them are on this list of defunct coasters, so that should tell you a lot about the current state. But it was a fun ride, nothing amazing. It's not on the bottom of the list, so there's that. Moving on to number 20, we have Flitzer at Maurice Piers. I haven't ridden this ride in a long time. In fact, it's been 10 years since I rode this ride, but I remember really enjoying it. The Flitzer model is just a very good classic attraction. It's a shame that a lot of them have disappeared, but there are still a few here and there, and this one was really fun. Number 19, we have La Vibora at Six Flags Over Texas, one of the classic Intamin bobsled coasters. I never got to ride the sister coaster to this, which was at Great Escape, but I did ride this one, and it was fun. I definitely prefer some of the other bobsled coasters to this one. I just thought this one was kind of janky and didn't really do too much, but other than that, it was still a very fun ride. Number 18, we have Wildcat at Hershey Park. This is a ride I feel got a lot more hate than it really needed. Sure, it was rough, sure, it was a little boring, but it was nothing that's, awful. I will say I'm very glad they decided to RMC it, because Wildcat's Revenge is incredible, but that's not to knock Wildcat. It was a fine ride, plus it was GCI's first coaster, so it definitely holds a special piece for them in that regard. At number 17, we have Apocalypse at Six Flags America. You guys might be a little confused why this is on here. I personally do count the stand-up to floorless conversions as two separate credits, which I know is very controversial, but that's just the way I see it because they ride very differently to me. So that's why I have Apocalypse on here, and I honestly preferred Apocalypse to Firebird. I thought it was a lot better with the stand-up trains. I only ever rode it once, but it was a pretty fun ride, and of course, B&M's first coaster. It gets merit for that alone. At number 16, we have Anaconda at King's Dominion, which was a classic Aero Looper. This ride always got a ton of hate. I always thought it was a little overhated. I mean, it wasn't the greatest ride ever. The first half was pretty solid, and the two corkscrews at the end were cool, but everything in between was not very good at all. It just kind of meandered around, bonked your head, but it was still a really nice ride, and it looked fantastic being right over the lake like that. At number 15, we have Superman Escape from Krypton. I only ever rode one side of this, so that's why it's only taking up one spot. And this was a very cool ride. I mean, obviously nothing crazy. I believe I rode the forward side, so I didn't ever get to experience backwards. But it was crazy to have all of that wind hitting you, especially in that hot California sun. Fly up, come back down. Very simple ride, but it was very fun, very unique. And it is kind of a shame that we're not going to get to see these coasters around anymore. At number 14, we have Scorpion at Busch Gardens Tampa, and it's always a shame to see one of these classic Schwarzkopf loopers close, especially this one. It was a really good ride, very smooth, very intense, and, it really sucks to see such a classic old ride model start to go away. It makes sense, though, as parts become harder and harder to come by, more expensive to maintain, but I really did enjoy this ride. At number 13, we have the first of two backyard coasters, Shadow Stalker, which was built by Sammy, built to thrill. And this one was really cool. It had that sideways airtime hill, the off-axis hill, and then the turn. It was definitely a little bit bigger than the original and it had some nice airtime, but I do like the original better. At number 12, we have Black Stallion. The airtime on this ride is kind of hard to explain. You really had to experience it to understand. Whether you did it forwards or backwards, it was equally as insane, and I'm very happy I got to experience both of his coasters because they were very cool rides. At number 11, we have Stinger at Dorney Park, one of the smaller Vekoma inverted boomerangs. And this ride I really enjoyed. I only ever rode it once. I rode it actually in its closing year, which was a miracle because this ride had a lot of downtime. And I thought it was cool. Plus, you can still ride a clone of it at Kings Island. So if you ever forget what Stinger felt like, Invertigo is the exact same. And I actually probably do like this ride better than Iron Menace. I know some people might be mad at me for that opinion, but I really do enjoy these Vekomas. They're very good. At numbers 10 and 9, we have Rolling Thunder, both sides at Six Flags Great Adventure. Classic ride that still to this day is heavily missed by people at the park. They still have a memorial for it too underneath El Toro, which is always very nice. But I vividly remember the days back then when I was a little kid and I would go on Rolling Thunder and just ride it over and over, constantly looking over at El Toro or King Dakar, waiting for the day I was tall enough for those. And it was a real shame the day that this ride closed and did not get RMC'd. I think that was one of the bigger mess-ups of older Six Flags. But it was a great ride, and hopefully it'll one day be replaced by something worthy. At number 8, we have Vortex at Kings Island. This is one of my favorite Aero mega looping coasters. It was really big, had this awesome presence. One of the most photogenic coasters of all time too. The way it was framed within the park just looked so good, and there are so many good angles of it. I loved that first drop. It was one of the more underrated first drops out there. The whole layout was just really cool. Was it a little rough? Of course, all the Aero loopers were a little rough, but this one had a really cool layout. Moving on to number 7, we have Wicked Twister at Cedar Point. Now, I actually do prefer the standard version of the Intimate Impulse, the one with the twist in the front and the vertical spike in the back. But Wicked Twister was a bit bigger, and it had the dual twisted spikes, plus being right up along the beach like that. It was a very cool ride. I'm not surprised they got rid of it because it didn't really fit in very well at Cedar Point, and what they did with that area now looks so much better. But Wicked Twister, nonetheless, was still a really fun ride. At number 6, we have Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket at Universal Studios Florida. This is a ride that always got either a lot of hate or a lot of praise, and I'd put myself somewhere in the middle. I didn't hate it. I thought, sure, it was a little rough, but it wasn't anything worse than some other rides out there. But it wasn't like this top tier, incredible ride, because it definitely was a little strange. The best part of it was obviously getting to choose your music, and I did Kickstart My Heart. I did a few other songs. I did Freebird on my last ride. So great song selections you could have on that attraction. There was some good airtime spruced in and had some really nice interactivity with the park. But it really felt like a bit of a sore thumb there. It just didn't make sense at the park. So hopefully the new coaster replacing it will fit in a little bit better. At number 5, we have Nighthawk at Carowinds. Now I know this is the Flying Dutchman that everyone kind of dissed on a little bit. They always said this one was the worst. But I didn't really think the quality difference between this one and the other two was really that big. I thought this ride was really fun. It was very intense, and I never had an issue with it. Plus, it looked phenomenal where it was in the park. And hopefully, when Carowinds does replace this ride, they put something equally as, dominant over the front of the park as this ride once was. At number 4, we have Green Lantern at Six Flags Great Adventure. If you guys know me, you guys know I was a huge fan of Green Lantern. I always thought it got way too much hate. The layout was absolutely incredible, and if you could figure out how to ride comfortably in the stand-up position, you were going to love the ride. And still to this day, I really do miss this ride. It was so good, and it was one of the few coasters at Great Adventure that wasn't a clone, so losing it definitely stung quite a bit. At number 3, we have Firehawk at Kings Island. Now, this and Batwing, I'd say, were pretty much tied as my favorite Vekoma Flying Dutchman because they were literally the exact same ride. And I remember my first ride on this one, my only ride on this one, where I was kind of petrified by the restraint system because it didn't feel very secure to little me back then. But I did really enjoy the ride, very intense. And at the end of the day, it does make sense why they got rid of it. Orion is the better ride, but that doesn't mean that Firehawk wasn't awesome. At number 2, we have Top Thrill Dragster at Cedar Point. I consider this defunct because Top Thrill 2 to me is a wildly different experience and is definitely a separate coaster from this one. But the original Dragster really did pack a punch. Going up that top hat and through that launch with just a lap bar was crazy to me, having never experienced it with a lap bar like that. That being said, though, I do think that there was a coaster that was better that did basically the same thing, and that coaster at number 1 is, of course, King Dakar at Six Flags Great Adventure. I feel like it's going to be hard to top this as my favorite defunct coaster. Losing it last year was just not fun at all. It was miserable to have to watch that happen, but thinking about the ride itself, it was so good. Basically the exact same ride as Top Thrill Dragster, but to me, more intense, and it had that airtime hill at the end, which actually did give you airtime. And this is one of my most ridden coasters of all time, so of course I'm going to be a little biased towards it, but I will forever miss that 128 mile an hour launch, flying up into the sky and zooming back down. There's really nothing else like it. But with all that being said, that is going to do it for my ranking of all of the defunct coasters I've ridden. I'll probably wind up doing this again next year because we'll probably lose even more coasters next year. That seems to be the way it's going now. But if you guys enjoyed this video, agree, disagree with my rankings, let me know down in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye, guys.